Welcome to Think Tank. I'm your host, Gian Penalosa, and today is Friday, July 6, 2018. In today's debate, we will be talking about the gender wage gap in America. For those who don't know, the gender wage gap is a measure of wage disparity between men and women. This definition comes from Ellis Gold, who is a senior economist at the Economic Policy Institute. The Women at Work report of 2016 by the International Labor Organization calculated that women worldwide earn on average 77% of the male wage. The wage differentials reflect the vast inequalities between men and women on the labor market and in society at large. A primary cause of this is occupational segregation. Women now have jobs as astronauts, Supreme Court justices, and wind turbine engineers. However, further progress in occupational integration has stalled in the recent centuries. Just as there's been no progress in occupational integration during the 2000s, there's been no further progress towards equal wage. For today's debate on whether or not the gender wage gap exists in today's society, we'll have two guest speakers debating on this topic. For our first guest speaker, we have Olivia Su, a supervisor from the famous Yves Saint Laurent. Olivia, how are you today?
I'm doing great so far, Gian. How was your 4th of July?
It was great. I had a delicious barbecue party with my family. So, tell us a little bit about what you do at your work.
So, I'm currently a supervisor from the sales department at Yves Saint Laurent headquarters, mostly looking over paper before giving the go to other employees.
Okay, and for our second guest speaker, we have Cesar Galvez, who has the opposite opinion from Olivia. So now Cesar, can you tell me a little about your background before we start?
Yeah, so currently I'm a hedge fund manager at JP Morgan Asset Management. I graduated from Harvard and I have a degree in math, business, and chemical engineering.
Thank you, Cesar. Now Olivia, what is your stance on the gender wage gap?
I believe that the gender wage gap is an uprising problem in the working society. Women and men should be paid the same amount regardless of the gender bias and how men are more capable than women in certain aspects. According to Kristen Kay, she says in the article, Occupational Prestige and the Gender Wage Gap, occupational segregation persists despite the increase in women's education and labor force participation.
So Cesar, now tell us about your stance on the gender wage gap.
Look, the gender pay gap does not exist. It's based on a misunderstanding of the terms wages and earnings. If you really want to understand that issue, look up the definitions to those terms.
Can you explain this, please?
If you take all the money men and women make and do a simple division, then there will be a difference. However, the difference is because women make different life choices.
Well, how can you conclude that the difference is only based on the different life choices instead of other reasons such as gender biases?
Look, Olivia, you do not understand the difference between wages and earnings. There is no wage gap between men and women, and if anything, there is a reverse wage gap. According to a study from Time magazines in 2010, women on average earn 8% more than men in 50 major cities after college. The truth is, women take more time off and choose different jobs. Men take riskier jobs or take jobs that women are not physically capable of doing. The reality is that there is no difference when you account for these things.
So is a statistic that women earn 77% of what a man earns incorrect?
Yes, so it's an overused statistic by feminists to mislead people to believe in their views. The 27% disparity is simply the average earning difference. It does not account for position, education, job tenure, or job hours.
According to Karp's article called The Gender Pay Gap Narrows, but men earning 23% more than women agency finds. He talked about the statistic that women earn 77% of what a man earns is an overall estimation of percentage of all jobs and with the same amount of work hours combined. There is an even greater differences in industries such as insurance and financial services, real estate, and constructions. According to Simon's article called The Wage Gap is the Result of Discrimination, the wage disparity between men and women costs women anywhere from $400,000 to $2 million over a lifetime. Keenly impacted the economic security of single women who are heads of households and those women in retirement.
Okay, Olivia, if that were true, my boss could get away with paying a woman 77% of what he pays my male colleagues. Why would he ever hire a male? If it would just be the right financial move, wouldn't it? It would improve profits.
Are you saying women make wrong career choices?
No, not at all. Women just tend to major less in areas like engineering and physics. No one is holding them back from doing this. Women dominate in areas like biology. These choices need to be factored in as an economist when assessing the difference in earnings.
No, women are not making the wrong career choices.
Are you saying it's okay for women to get paid less than men for doing the same job?
No, not at all. You cannot pay a woman or a man different for the same job. This is illegal and against the law.
Exactly. Since it is illegal and against the law to pay women and men differently for the same job, then why is it still happening in workplaces till this day?
What would you attribute the differences then?
Career choices and amount of hours worked.
Most women work the same job and the same amount of hours, and yet they're still underpaid. The amount of work hours should be flexible due to an employee's own circumstances, such as a mother cannot work the same hours as a newly graduated student because the mother has to take care of her baby while the newly graduated student is focused on finding a stable long-term job.
What do you mean about amount of hours?
The figures Olivia would try to argue are averages. The reality is women prefer balanced lives. They take longer holiday breaks and more vacation time, and they tend to work less, affecting these values.
How does your wife feel about your opinion?
She's actually a perfect example of this. She's in med school in Harvard. She took off a year in between her third and fourth year to take care of our newborn baby. She made that choice, and that's not a bad choice at all. So Olivia, tell me, have you ever experienced this gender bias in the workplace you so deeply believe in?
Absolutely. I have experienced gender bias in my workplace. My male coworker who is in the same position as me earns more money working the same hours as me. According to Philip Cohen's article, it is concluded that the gender gap in pay is a function of two distinct sources: the differential distribution of women and men across jobs and occupations that vary with respect to pay and within job differences.
So now let's look at a visual representation of the gender wage gap. A picture surrounding the gender wage gap has recently gained popularity. What are your thoughts on it?
So this picture illustrates how the media portrays corporations as the villains, discriminating women in the workplace. However, this is not true at all. It's simply an advertising trick with a leftist political message that should be removed. It tells girls that they won't be able to succeed in the real world on their own successes and marry it, so this is not the message we should be giving our daughters. Like Emily Eckes in her article, Gender Pay Gap is Mostly a Myth, convincing women of widespread overwhelming injustice against them is not helping them at all.
Well, I think this picture illustrates that women throughout the world should do whatever they think is right and still face the harsh society and negativity, the bull, head on without feeling like they're doing the wrong thing.
Okay, so now that our show is coming close to an end, do any of you have any last words?
Alright, so in closing, there is no wage gap. The truth is, women just take more time off and take different jobs, which can be accounted for the difference. There is no wage gap, I repeat, when we account for these things. It's a free country, and women can choose whatever they want, regardless of what feminists want them to take. Women just tend to major in humanities, and that's not a bad thing for women being in the workplace, but they just need to be as qualified as men to be in those jobs.
The gender wage gap is indeed true, and it is happening at many workplaces. In Mendel H's article called The Role of Occupational Attribute in Gender Earnings Inequality, he stated occupations not only explain a significant portion of net gender pay gaps, but have also contributed to the narrowing of the gaps over the past several decades, as occupational attributes that favors women's pay have become more dominant over time.
Well, alright, thank you Olivia and Caesar for coming to the show. It was great having you, but now it's time for the audience to decide. Does the gender wage gap exist in today's society? Tune in next time on Think Tank.